Okay, now the rest of the panelists need to come with me. I can't do it all. But yeah, we're going to have a great presentation. So we're just going to sit on the couches and have a great discussion. Mind where we sit? Those are supposed to be running, right?
They will, yeah.
Oh, they will? Okay.
Like every 20 or 30 seconds.
Okay, thanks everybody. Really glad you're here. I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion. So I want to welcome Kevin McGinty, Stacey Jones, and Colin Chowdhury. So Kevin's Selkirk First Nation, Stacey and Colin with the newly formed Selkirk Copper Minerals Mines. And so, like I say, I think it's been really interesting to see the Minto mine, come out of receivership and Selkirk First Nations involvement in that. And also want to say congratulations to Selkirk Copper Mines. Just got listed a few weeks ago, right? So very interesting times. And so with that, I have a bunch of questions I'm going to ask the panel and they'll respond. So we have an hour. We're planning on talking for about 45 minutes and then we'll take some questions from the floor. So with that, I just wanted to give each of the panelists an opportunity to introduce yourselves. So maybe we'll start with you, Kevin.
Right, thank you, Sue. Nice to see everyone here today. It's exciting times, like Sue said, and it's quite a new endeavor for Selkirk here and moving forward. So my introduction is, first I'm going to start off with my real name, right? It's a Si'ini'ing, which means stand by your grandfather. That's my native name. And then the given name is Kevin McGinty. Been part of the First Nations, kind of the mining sector for well over 7 years. I'm the current mineral resource director for Selkirk and one of the negotiating members through this whole 2-year process that we had. Previous life I had, I spent 6 years, 2 consecutive terms as a chief of my nation. Those were proudest moments of my time. Really got me to grow a lot and really see how my vision and my thoughts were to improve our nation. And with that, 6 years I've really worked closely with an operating mine at that time, Capstone. Really tried to improve that relationship. There was a lot of ups and downs, some good things and some things that we could have improved, right? So I think that was really kind of the origin of kind of the step we took. So without getting too winded here, I'll pass it on for the introductions.
Thank you. As Sue mentioned, my name is Stacey Jones. I had the pleasure of starting my career up in the Yukon back in 2010 and 2011 under Adrian Fleming. And to this day in my career, I hold lessons in my core value of what I learned that year, doing systematic exploration, good geoscience, and making decisive decisions and not being over-emotional. That's what I try to do. From there, I had an opportunity to do my master's in Nunavut, and that really set my career up to working in the North, which is a family joke because I'm from the Caribbean, and they get cold by all my stories. But I have been fortunate to be part of this project and this journey for over a year. And every time we chat, Kevin, I learn something new. And I thank you for sharing your name. I didn't know that before.
Wow, to the last one on this side of the panel. Well, good afternoon. I think the setup that we've had this morning and probably in the lead up to the week is perfect for this group, but it's also a point where we have to sort of reflect on what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. So my name is Colin Chowdhury, and I've been in the industry since basically 1990. I worked in the oil and gas industry before that as a driller, but geoscientist by trade, and the bulk of my career was with two companies, Cominco Limited and Tech Resources. And for the last sort of 7 years with Tech, I retired in 2024 as the Vice President of Business and Corporate Development. But for the last 7 years, I was responsible for building their copper growth portfolio across the world. And one of the things that sort of really resonated with me around this opportunity, and why I cannot be more than, it's almost hard to contain the excitement, is all of the things that this industry is looking for in terms of bringing critical minerals to bear and to the market in a reasonable way are actually with this asset, with this team, and this historic experience that's here in front of us. Now our job is to deliver on that. But that's everything from community to the asset itself, to the jurisdiction, to the power, the water, the roads. It really is unique, and I can't stress it enough. I've spent so long trying to create those elements, I almost couldn't believe that they actually existed in one spot. So hopefully we learn a little bit about more of that today. And I'd echo sort of Stacy's comments. You know, I've had the chance just over the last 3.5 months to be to the asset now some 8 times, I think. Met with Chief and Council 3. But every time I get the chance to spend time both with Stacy and with Kevin, you gain a different perspective on what makes them people and humans. And that's really where this story starts and finishes, I think. But hopefully we get there.
Sorry, Steve, I just want to add, as Mr. Lanson alluded to earlier, a geologist can't go without maps. So we have some photos on display, and hopefully that triggers a lot of questions from the audience for this latter half of our presentation.
Thanks for those introductions. So yeah, I think the first question, I mean, and this is for you, Kevin, but others might weigh in. So I think the question was, you know, why did Selkirk First Nation acquire Minto out of bankruptcy? And what was the process or the approach within your nation to make that decision?
Okay, I think that's a good question, and
A loaded one?
it is a bit loaded, and I don't know if we have enough time to kind of go through that whole process, right? It was a 2-year process, you know, and Colin alluded to a unique situation, very complex set of factors that were part of the receivership. This was Selkirk's first kind of exposure to a receivership process, and you know, unfortunately, it wasn't Yukon's first, and you know, it was bittersweet. You know, we didn't go out and seek the purchase. It was almost as we were the only last hope to actually keep the mine site on site and have that future continue with the possibility of a new ownership. So the 2 years, it went through a whole sales process, and then, you know, they eliminated a lot of the companies that were kicking tires that really weren't heavily invested, and then 2 emerged that had the potential of purchasing the mine. And what we started to realize was the complexity of this sales process. And Selkirk was a part of that third-party group, including the Yukon government. And for the reasons as we were the underland landowners, and the government was the regulator, work at that time conducting a very well done remediation work that was being conducted at the site. So a lot of this complexity start to come to the top, and so through the court process, we kind of broke that down into what we call, it's tangible assets and then the non-tangibles. So the purchase of the equipment and the infrastructure was the easy part. So we've done that, and we had our own internal processes as a government on how to get that support, and then also how to free up the capital that's needs for the purchase. And we had our own governing bodies meetings, and it was unanimous at that time that we would take this opportunity. But we had some core values as well that when we were looking at this potential of purchasing the mine, we had some real core values that we wanted to see. But kind of in the background, we have been working with individuals and supports. It's not been only the Selkirk crew. We have had assistance from others, but I would throw out a shout out to our table over there. I didn't do all of this myself. We had a very astute, reputable team that we had in place, although we're a small team, but very knowledgeable. Like myself, we've been involved one way or another with the whole saga with the Minto mines. So very experienced, whether it's on the regulatory side or whether it's on the working on the cooperation agreements and so forth. So it didn't, it wasn't a light decision, but we had full support and endorsement from our citizens to do this. And I think we were the group that knew the complexities of how this next package B, we call it, the non-tangibles, are going to be improved through the courts. And this will require the assignment of licenses, and the receiver will hold those in a period of time for us to allow us to do further exploration work, and Stacy will elaborate a bit more on that. But it kind of, and then how we do that. How do we do that with Yukon working on the remediation side of it, and not to jeopardize any potential future opening of the mine. So there's a lot of complexities there. There are a lot of players involved. You got a bond that's there, but that's held by Zurich. And then, so I think we had a vision, or we had a way to get across the finish line, more so than, the people that were wanting to outright put a bid forward. They just didn't have a path forward for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of information. Great overview. Lots of moving pieces. Yeah, so you guys have done a lot of work. So I don't know from Selkirk Copper side if you guys want to comment on the process and how it evolved, or.
Well, I'm the least long tenured in the journey here. So I started August 1st, but part of the backstory that I've understood and that I continue to sort of learn about is, no one wants a receivership or a bankruptcy to happen. Like, you have to, your heart goes out not just to the community, but even the principals, regardless of where you come from. So I think, but when that happens, there's sort of three things that happen more broadly in the world. There are those who say, gee, that's a terrible thing. I feel for that group and I feel for the communities around. And then, but they're observers. They're generally passive observers. Then there's another group of folks that say, how can I take advantage of this? And then I think there's a third group. And so my understanding here is that through the relationships that have existed in the industry, not just here in the Yukon, but elsewhere, where parts of the group that ended up partnering with the Selkirk First Nation really sort of said, how can we actually help the community? How can we help the community through these next periods of time? Not having expert views about all these sort of things, but having had gone through a bankruptcy. So that was the Fiore Capital Group out of Vancouver. And it's essentially an incubator group. It's well storied in the industry as to how they do things. But maybe most importantly was about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a similar bankruptcy for a gold mine in Ontario. And they really took several pages out of that book. And the first one was to reach out and engage. And I think through that process, I wasn't part of it, but I've heard lots of stories, some pretty entertaining. They landed on a common view as how to work together. And that was before the deal was done. That was like, and then they had the patience to work through it. And, and then they had, people like Stacy stand up and say, I really want to be part of this. And I want to help, and I want to contribute to the better understanding and the vision of the asset going forward. And so, I think it was a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, but the vision ended up being the same, I think. And that's a really interesting story. My hope is over the next few years, the story comes out even more. Because I do think it's a very difficult thing to actually get up out of your chair and stand up and say, how can I help? So I do think that that was part of it, but it's equally challenging, I think, for the Selkirk First Nation, and I'm sure be happy to hear if this is true. It's also difficult to accept help. So I think there's a real back and forth there, right? And so that's, I think this is a really powerful story. And I do think we can't do it justice here, but I do think you'll hear more and more about this. At the end of the day, it's like-minded people with a view to the future to make this thing work, so.
The only small thing I'd add is that there was a level of creativity and bravery early on in this process that looked at what the asset needed to succeed. And while the process took longer than anticipated, how the negotiations went and how the transaction unfolded, it created us an opportunity to do the drilling, and Selkirk leading the way knew what the asset needed, and I think that is what's actually creating the opportunity for us today, is how they negotiated it.
So I mean, I would just like to summarize it, the relationships, right? Building that relationships, building trust, right? To go forward. So that's great. Thank you for sharing.
I would add one thing, sorry, it's a really brave thing that the First Nation have done. It is, by definition, a risky undertaking. And they're the ones who started it, so.
Agreed. Okay, I might just go on to the next question. I think this is for you, Stacey. So understand significant drill program, I think over 50,000 meters underway at Minto, and just wondered if you could comment on, the focus of that program. Is it infill, extension, expansion of zones, new targets?
All the above?
All of the above. So yeah, whatever you'd like to share about that program and how you guys are approaching it. I think the audience would be interested to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what I was mentioning, I think very early on everyone knew that additional time and effort needed to be spent drilling and understanding and expanding the current resources. So we have too many goals, but what I'd say the most important is getting our teams familiar with the geology and going back to the basics of geoscience. We're rebuilding our databases, oriented core, multi-element, thin sections, whole rock. We're building these and amassing these building blocks that are going to directly influence our new geologic model, which doesn't currently exist, that will inform not only our future resources, but how we are going to explore the district. And that's something that we're very passionate about, is turning our eye to the district and moving outside of just the Minto block. But Colin doesn't let me get away with much, so we still have to deliver on our corporate and project objectives, and that's really seeing a meaningful conversion of our large inferred resource, which is about 60% of our global resource, to attain our goals in that feasibility and make sure that our final feasibility study, or our feasibility study, reflects the metal endowment that we believe is at the project. So the drilling this year is a delicate balance between that infill, between the expansion, and between testing our newly found geologic ideas and making sure that we have the right confidence in pushing and continuing to succeed and making discovery another key focus of the company and this project that hasn't really been a mandate for a long time.
I think that's a very important part, because I think, like any project, a lot of times when you go forward, you do a bunch of the exploration, then you advance it. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of us geologists in the audience that would love to just drill. And so you guys having that opportunity to do that big picture approach, without that someone breathing down your neck saying, okay, we need to stop that, we need to move over to here. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see the results of that program.
Absolutely, and I'd just say, all operators generally start with good intentions and are either under-resourced in human or financial capital. And we have an opportunity that most don't get, right? To take the time to understand, but also to keep true to our initial vision of we want this to be a lasting benefit to the community, and that's outside of just this 12 to 15 year mine life. That's our short-term goal.
She said it. I didn't
Okay.
think she was going to say it. Because
Yes.
there's a natural tension here with that which you have in front of you versus that which is your objective. So to say 12 to 15-year mine life is actually quite important. I don't know what the question is coming, but I mean, to me, this is really important. You know, there's substantive assets here. There's substantive mineral in the ground. Lots of understanding still to come. Some very good history and some challenging bits of history. But the reality is, somewhere along the line, someone has to say where we're going. And I will say, one of the coolest exchanges we've had over the last little while, we were onboarding engineering team at the site. So we were bringing Hatch on and SRK, both who have a bit of a history on the asset and knowledge. And Kevin, myself, and our VP of engineering were there. And we're sort of walking around the site, familiarizing people, and making sure we're having the discussion around data versus interpretation first. But we had a session near to the end of it. I think it was the end of the day. And they asked Kevin, they said, Kevin, what's your vision for the asset? And not to put too many words into it, he says, we'd love, 12 to 15-year mine life. And that's the exact same phrase I've been using with our team. And we didn't plan it, it just happened. But that's what we're trying to get to, right? So now we have to demonstrate our capacity to do that. We have to work with government, regulator, communities, et cetera, to see that happen. And in my view, it's absolutely doable. But it is a nervous point in time, right? Because it's not all there today. It will be. But that's where we need to go, right? Because this thing can really, really give if we get it right. So I don't know what the question was going to be, but
That was my next next question. I'll just maybe add a few comments. Because last year we heard about all the reclamation happening at site, so that was great. And we've had these rolling pictures, so obviously I'm sure everyone's looking at going, what's going on? So yeah, I think it was just, what is actually happening at site and the plans. And, I think too, you guys are doing, this deliberative phased approach. And maybe are there lessons learned from previous operators? Just good and bad, right? You always learn from, it's always easy to go, oh, hindsight's 20/20, right? But yeah, so I don't know if you want to expand on that or if either of you have
I'll
comments
do
on
it
that.
really quick, but it's not because there's really three things that we're doing. And I've been asked this now, I've been probably interviewed and discussed the opportunity here, not just with the community, but with our team, but with over 100 investors in the last sort of 90 days. And they keep saying, what are you doing? And I say, we're planning to make a plan. And those plans, those initial plans, are drilling, getting a better understanding of the resource, feeding that into trade-off studies that will start imminently now, that really are to pull together integrated mine plans, waste and tailings disposal options, as well as water management. And then that will ultimately feed into a feasibility study that we expect to start probably mid-next year. And then in parallel to that, and concurrent with all that, is to make sense of the strong platform that we have for permits and authorizations, but make it reflect what we want to do going forward. So right now, we don't have permits that allow us to realize that sort of 15-year mine life, but that's what we need to do concurrently with all this other sort of work. So it's three things: drill, study, permitting, and then execute. And then what's happening on site, I will say the reclamation work that's been done and has been executed by contractors here in the territory has been done exceptionally well. It's a real pleasure. You will see it on a couple of the photos. Like just the reclaimed dumps, the contouring, the anchoring that they've done, the attention to detail, some rerouting of water lines, et cetera, has just been done at a very high quality, and it's something that sets us up for success going forward. And then the rest is just trying to figure out what we need to do next.
Right. Anybody have any other comments on that, or I'll go on to another question? No? Okay. So yeah, I think sort of back to you, Kevin. So just wondering if you can comment on why you think it's taken so long for a Canadian First Nation to hold a significant equity interest in a publicly traded mining company. And perhaps, I think you've already touched on it a bit, but the comment on the unique situation that Selkirk First Nation is in with respect to Minto and it being on your Category A land. Whatever you'd like to share.
I seem to get the loaded questions. Well, really, I can't speak for nations. I could only speak for our nation in regards to why does it take so long. I think it took a while for the two entities to come together. When you really look at it, and I could tell you whole stories about 1896 when the gold rush happened, and our thoughts and beliefs about what was going on with the stampede and all of the crazed gold seekers. So we had no value for that. It wasn't something that was of value, of importance to us as a nation. The resources and the survival was key and foremost to our people. No, I think it's gone. I just hadn't gone too far down. So it took years, right? It didn't fit in the way First Nations see resources and sees the land. And over on the other side, the industry, you'll see, the profit generating that's created from the wealth, from the resources, and unfortunately, we see some of the scarring that happens to the land. And that wasn't always a fit or desire for First Nation to be a part of that. But I think now things are changing. There's a shift, and not only in our thoughts and our way of life, but financially as well. First Nations have, over the years, have strategically invested and have significant financial capabilities nowadays, where they could potentially be a major player in the mining sector. And you look at it, a lot of the First Nations lands are pretty undeveloped. Like ourselves, we sit on R6A, which was a strategic selection back in the land claims negotiation periods. We knew that there was resources there, and we selected the lands around. And even back then, there was that thought and that vision that, hey, maybe one day there could be a partnership. If this mine goes and gets into production, maybe there is a way to do some custom milling from our lands and look at a real partnership going forward. And that was always in the back of our minds as this mine started and went into production. We had these very discussions about the possibility of exploring R6A with various companies, whether it's Capstone or whether it's Minto Metals. We'll probably have these discussions with Selkirk Copper about this regional district play. But speaking for our people and our nation, we had to do something. Right now, the wave, I don't know if some of you or you're probably not even aware where our little community is at. It's 3-hour drive north, very small community. It's unincorporated. So little to, very little government support in regards to, infrastructure that's needed for our community. We've been waiting for those key infrastructures for years. I can think back 30 years where hopefully someday we'll have government involvement to put an elders facility in our community to keep our elders in our community, build on the future of our youth. And I work in a basement of a 1980s design administration office. It's a dire need to really modernize and to showcase our rich culture and history. But it requires capital. And, we've been waiting for 30 years for progress. But this is our point of view. I think the nation and its citizens are at a point to say, okay, we need to do something here. because we have all of these needs. We deserve better. We now have the exposure and the skills. Like I said, through this whole receivership, it was the Selkirk team that had the wherewithal and the ability to find solutions to complete that purchase agreement. And that was from the experiences we gathered over the years working with the various companies that come and go through the Minto history. So I don't think we're going to be, the last as a, equity ownership of a mining company. I think we're going to be the first, but there will be more significant investment from the First Nations going forward, because a lot of them are probably in that same situation as well. There's a lot of needs for our people, and we heard 10 years of commitments, of reconciliation, and promissories to improve the First Nations way of life, whether it's their corporations or their reserves. But I haven't seen much of that really trickle down to our community. So that destiny and that choice was our choice, and we would love to lay the foundations of what a true model, what a partnership would look like going forward. And that's something we'll work on, and we know eyes and ears and bright lights are shining on us. And that's our task going forward, is how to really improve that equity ownership and really be a part of a true collaborative kind of partnership going forward.
Guys, any comments or?
Sure. I can just briefly say, from the exploration geology front, the prospective rocks don't end at a claim boundary. And I think the opportunity to explore the regional lands is an opportunity for both the company and the nation, right? As Kevin was saying, and it comes down to really building the trust that we can be prudent operators, and that when the opportunity is there, that we will work, of course, with the nation and do it how they want to do it.
You guys are going to like the next question.
Oh,
It's
shit,
great.
did I jump?
No, it's great. Yeah, because I think that was a question. Same thing about what is the plan for outside of the quartz mine license, right? The exploration on category A or B, or becoming a district player or in the district. So yeah, I don't know if there's any. You guys
I
are
can
sort
keep
of
going
commenting on that?
and just say that we have 7 large land packages that have seen very little modern exploration. That totals almost 26,000 hectares, right? So, and between us and the Carmex deposits to the south, so go catch Tom's presentation on Wednesday. He'll get into a lot of the geology. Like, this is an incredible district that has seen, it's been pretty sleepy for a long time, and the prospective rocks are there and need some time and money.
I think maybe this might be a question, Colin and Stacy. So just commenting on, whether there was and I think you've already kind of answered it, a more patient approach to return on investment, was required given the nature of the ownership and long-term vision to develop the project. So, like you said, you've been out talking to a whole bunch of investors. Can you maybe talk a bit about how investors are receiving, this approach, or just because there's some investors out there that want a quick return. This is obviously, going to be maybe longer, but in my opinion, a better return for everybody. But yeah, if anybody would like to comment on that.
Yeah, again, the investor landscape is an interesting one, but I'd say if I sort of had to put them in 2 camps, there might be a third. There are those who want you to go back into production now, right away. Obviously, this is a former producing mine. It's only been, on care and maintenance for a couple years. Just get at it, because the copper price, gold price, everything's great, and just get back into it. And then there's another group of investors that are sort of more in the sort of drill baby drill side of things, where they say, look, you have an opportunity to really understand the resource here expand the footprint, think about it in a different way that maybe others haven't in the past. And, you know, quite honestly, they're very news focused. So they want information coming out that's substantive, that you don't move into the valley of death, if you want to call that, from Pierre Lasson's talk earlier, where it's just capital going out the door and it's all about engineering and design, et cetera. So there's sort of that two camps. And, you know, this may be the worst thing to do, is to try to satisfy both. But I think one of the things that we've definitely seen that I think is important to understand, it's important that we do this in a methodical and thoughtful way. You know, the past experience on this asset strongly suggests rushing back into production is not a good idea. So what we've done purposely is sort of put a plan out there before we raise the money. And we sort of said, look, we think this is about a 2-year voyage, plus or minus, and it's going to have those 3 elements that I talked to you about before. But it's so that we can go into a restart decision with a high quality package of information that allows us to finance this in a very thoughtful way. But also it helps us build a relationship on the ground so we don't make as many mistakes as we might otherwise do. So, and we purposely started with the drilling, because that's probably the longest lead time part to get those substantive mine plans and whatnot moving. But I'm very comfortable, at least in the last 45 days, because I keep talking to the same shareholders again and again. That camp is shifting more to the planning conversation that we're having. They're still very interested, because, you know, there's very few groups of this size and this character that could be producing substantive amounts of copper in 2028. That's lightning fast in our industry. We've talked about it a lot. And even though it is a restart, that's really attractive to the industry. They're very much in that time frame, and they're getting even more supportive of the way that we're talking about it. So, I mean, it's surprisingly positive in my view at the moment.
I think we've sort of gone through the questions we talked about, and we still have a few minutes maybe before we open up the floor. So I just don't know if there's anything else any of the panelists would like to touch on or comment on, or before we go to questions.
This is where I shine. Can I ask all the questions? I thought the panel earlier before lunch was it was fascinating, and we see a lot of very smart people allude to challenges in younger generations, and it comes from a macro perspective, right? They've seen the problem, but very few opportunity for those who are working to comment on what we're doing and how we're attracting not only the young investor, but how we're encouraging young citizens to care and to participate. So I want to put it to both of you on what we feel we need to do to keep the younger generation engaged. And I think I'll just start with one of the biggest challenges I see is the attention span. It takes 15 to 20 years for us to go from discovery to mine. I don't know any teenager who can sit still for a couple minutes. So how do we tailor our messaging? And maybe I'll go to Colin first, but how do we tailor our messaging, our marketing, our geoscience to attract that attention span?
She's asking the tough ones.
Wow, this is going to be fun.
I'm never going to be
So for the record, I no longer have teenagers. I have a 28-year-old, a 26-year-old, and a 22-year-old. They're all smarter, better looking, and stronger than I ever was. And I'm going to probably say smarter for a whole bunch of reasons, because the nature of how information flows today and how it flows into people who are making decisions about their future, it's incredibly fast and it's incredibly deep. So it's really tough to pull the wool over my son's eyes, because they've grown up in a world where they've been marketed to every hour of the day, 24/7, all the time. And excuse the expression, but they can see a line of bull a mile away, more than I can, because they've been trained to think about information in a different way, and they really can get at it in a different way. They're going to find some commentary about this before anybody else does. They will find it very quickly, and then they will phone me up, they will phone Stacy up, they will phone Kevin up, or they'll reach out in some way, shape, or form that's very creative, and they will try to hear it from the horse's mouth in a way that helps them make a decision. So I'm actually incredibly hopeful that we can attract that sort of attention and bring them into the industry in a way that makes a difference. You know, how we do it is just by transparent, engaged thought. When we make a mistake, we have to claim it, we have to own it. You know, we've got to live in the world of no surprises, but we're not going to be perfect either, right? The picture on the wall here, you see these young folks, they've bought in. They're already there. So I'm actually not that worried about it. What I'm probably more worried about is managing the patience of investors against everything else that's happening in the market, because the noise is incredibly high. And then I think the other thing is, a little bit was talked earlier today, time is important. We are not rushing back into production, but in all honesty, if we're going to be back into production by 2028, let's call it mid-2028, that is incredibly fast. To do it right, to do it well, to make sure that we've got water managed, waste, tails, etc. The metallurgy, we have to do some things in the plant. It's going to come a lot faster, and at the same time, you got to drill, because we need additional definition on the resources. So it will come quickly, but I think, you know, one of the fellows that's joined our team, and it's pretty important that, you know, a fellow, he joined as SVP of Operations, Chuck Hennessy's his name, he's back there somewhere, go talk to him. He said if there's anything that we can tell this audience and other audiences about our conviction about what we're doing, is that we're not rushing back into production. That we're taking a methodical, appropriate way, define the resources, get the plan, and then move forward. And that's, you know, in all honesty, that's what we're going to do. I have no doubt about it. So I do think in the end that will resonate, and I think it will attract young people. And my hope is we create the space for young people 45 minutes from the mine, where there's probably never been an open house, as I understand, like a mine open house as such, or maybe one. Yeah, like that, we have to change that, right? We have to change that fundamentally. So I think exposure is the other part, not just presentations, but let's go walk the walk.
So I think that's key, right? What Colin said is to create a culture of involving younger generations. And unfortunately, I have a nephew who stays with me, and he's in those teenage days. He sleeps a lot, but he, very keen and to technology. I think that's key to really attract, you know, the younger generations is through that technology, and having mentorships. You know, apprenticeships provided in our company that goes forward to help bring the younger generations on, who may not have the full skill sets that's needed, but allow them to grow, right? And it's something that I've done in our community, in our nation, is we bring in summer students during the summer. And I had 2 summer students in my department, you know, from the school, and just to get familiar with what we do. And they were out on the land, they were doing water monitoring programs, they were out doing wildlife counts, they were out putting game cameras out. So we tried to keep it really interactive and fun to keep their attention, and hopefully, you know, start sparking some interest in that, right? So I think working with various institutes such as the university here to really try to attract that, and going forward, we're you know, bringing and encouraging to bring the younger generations as along with the ride, kind of, so to speak. But once again, stage steps, right?
Yes.
And we'll get to that. And I don't really want to get too far into the, you know, the good news success side of it. And it's like we still got a lot of challenges in front of us, but that's one of, you know, our ultimate goals that we would want to see.
Yes. So I know you asked that question, Stacey.
You wanna answer it, Sue?
Did you have any comments from your perspective, or just?
No, just I thought it's a discussion I think we have to have more regularly, but at all levels, those operating and those observing. And from, you know, my department's perspective, we love to talk about rocks. Like, sharing is not our problem. And we also have a lot of interesting technology that I think the younger generation maybe hasn't been exposed to well yet, but would be immediately interested in, right? And this perspective of mining being a very physical thing, it's also a very digital thing. And how these days we explore and use data and create and showcase our ideas is all very visual and built on this technology. So I think it's about breaking down those walls and sharing that and showing how they can turn what is a game right now into an actual productive piece of our industry. I actually have a great example. I mean, sorry to digress, but earlier this year, we were faced with a infill challenge of like, how are we going to best be really effective and efficient in our infill drilling, because we were drilling around infrastructure. And we had 500-meter holes that we could only have X amount of collars and base all of this meaningful increased confidence drilling on. When we wrote a game for it, a simulation game that literally said, hey, we only have these places where we can put a collar, but I need to drill at this spacing 500 meters down. And one of our database managers and senior geologists literally wrote a game, which is just a series of simulations to optimize where we put our targets to a single collar. And that will save us money, that'll save us time, right? And a lot of logistical headaches.
And less disturbance, right?
Less
impact,
disturbance.
right? Definitely, great.
A lot of really cool solutions you
Yeah,
can come up
very
with.
neat, great. Okay, I think, do you want to make another,
Well,
before we take
maybe
questions? Yeah.
just one
Yep.
additional. And so I had the opportunity to go to the Western Australia back in 2005, 6, and 7, and work with some of the biggest companies in the world at the time as they were thinking about how they would engage in China with iron ore and whatnot. And there was a group called Fortescue, Twiggy Forrest, started, and everyone sort of predicted failure at the outset because he did a few things that were a little bit different. But just on the data and the engagement and the visualization part, and Chuck's going to hate me when I say this, I know right away. You could go into their office, their community office or their head office, and you could live see them shipping ore onto boats. You could see the process plant working, like right there. They were not scared of showing and sharing exactly what was happening on site. Now, there's a lot of safety considerations, there's a lot of other things, et cetera, that people worry about. But he said, look, at the end of the day, we need to engage people. So this is 2007, this is a little while ago. And all of the other majors in the mining world were like, this is a terrible idea. And I'm not sure why they said that, because once it started to happen in a more methodical way, you're bringing people in, you're bringing confidence to what you're doing. And I have to tell you, it was fascinating. Like, you could basically watch the control room and see the technology happening live. Thousands of data monitoring points, hundreds and hundreds of people, hundreds and hundreds of trucks moving on rail to a port where they were loading somewhere between 12 and 14 vessels a week with 100 to 140,000 tons of iron ore that was all going straight to China. And then you could watch the ore delivered into the port in China live. Like, it was astounding. That's 18 years ago. So we have lots of ways to engage. We just have to choose to do it.
Okay, I think with that, we've got maybe time for a question or two. And I think Jonas has got a mic if anybody wants to ask some questions of the panel. I think Jonas here.
Thanks for a great panel. Just a quick question. Kevin, you alluded to core values as part of the negotiation. I just wonder if you could just give a little bit of color on what those core values were.
Okay, thanks for that. I wanted time to elaborate a bit more on that, and wanted to be kind of conscious with the time as well. But core values, of course, is one of the key things when we started considering the possibility of a partnership going forward. And one and first and foremost is that the environment cannot be jeopardized. It's a blue ribbon approach. We want best practices put forward. And you've seen some slideshows here in regards to the remediation work is done. You just imagine what a true progressive reclamation plan should look like. like the work that's been done there did not jeopardize any future development. We're going forward for industry. If you actually start putting that work in while you're in production, we wouldn't have such a peak liability exposure. And we couldn't get to a point where there's a walkaway and there's a $100 million cleanup. And I think that's the type of things that we wanted to see, right? To ensure that what we do put these plans forward, those things are taken into consideration. We're not going to ease our expectations for the operation of the mine. We fought hard and long to get the water quality objectives that were put forward through these licenses. And, the company going forward, obviously we don't want breaks. We want to stand on that integrity. And I think that's part of that core values and that core priorities that we wanted to see, right? And another is well capitalized. Lessons learned in the past, we need to be well capitalized going forward, and we need to have a clear plan going forward. Especially when it comes to the assessment bodies and the regulatory bodies, it needs to be a clear plan that we all have an idea of how this is going to go forward. It cannot be murky and confusing. And I think that's another. And of course, Selkirk's involvement, whether it's through jobs and training, whether it's through our negotiated royalty revenue sharing agreements, whether it's through our governance that we would want to establish. So those are things I think we wanted to see, right? We wanted to see a return. Obviously, this is all great, and the end of the rainbow in the sky kind of thing is that we generate this wealth that will return back to our community to start filling in some of the voids that's needed, dire needs for our community. And I think those are the core values we have that we want to really see and put forward to the company.
That was a great question. Well, thanks for the response.
Thanks. With the elimination of the stream and the metal price tailwind, to what extent are you going to see resource expansion just from lower cutoff grade?
Great question. I can say that from our 2025 MRE, so something that we've just released, and what's gone into that update, as Michael mentioned, through this bankruptcy, we've lost a considerable gold stream. So and correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of all gold value was not being realized by and silver. It's not being realized by the operator, but being sold to Wheaton Precious. So through this bankruptcy, that is now no longer the case. We also see incredible changes in commodity prices over the last 3 or 5 years. So all those got built into this new update. And there was also a big discovery in recent years. 2021, 2022 was the first time an operator turned its attention back to expansion and discovery. And they succeeded with, nothing more than kind of attacking the low-hanging fruit, where they used previous data, an IP survey from 2010. They drilled off an anomaly and immediately succeeded. And with only 6 holes added about 1.1 million tons, which is almost a year's worth of mill feed. So back to your question, Michael, I think in that little bit of time and that little bit of effort, we saw an almost 40% increase in our resource. And I think with our focus continually being on expansion and with some good tides rising in the commodity prices, we'll continue to see an increase in our resource. And with the right conversion, I see us attaining that 12 to 15-year mine life without a challenge. I wouldn't put a ton on it, but yeah, hopefully through our trade studies we'll get there.
I'd put a ton on it. I think you'll see more, though, that will come. I mean, that's part of the trade-off studies and the mine planning work. I do think it's a fundamental shift in how we look at a ton of rock. This will be the first time since 2007 that as an operator of the asset going forward, that we benefit from the full value of the rock. And you're right, it will change how we do resource modeling. It will change how we do parts of our mine planning. Maybe most importantly, it will change how we operate the mill. And our recovery focus will, be commensurate with the real value of the ore. I mean, we have to all be a little bit mindful, though. Like, if we all wanted to assume spot prices, we'd build everything. So I do think we have to be a little bit cautious in how we do it. But at the same point in time, it's a big value shift. Coming back to this idea, it's great to be exuberant and excited about the opportunity, but we still have to deliver. And I think you're hearing that in Kevin's comments as well as Stacy's. That's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. Our job is now to deliver. And that is, we've got a team. We might introduce them here quickly. They're going to hate this, but I'm going to probably ask them to stand. Because at the end of the day, this is just a small component, and there'll be, so I'm going to call them out. I don't know where they all are, but Greg Fiquette and Stephen Mills, if you could stand up, please. They are nominated to the board of directors. Stay standing. Please, pretty please. Scott Fulton, our VP of Engineering, is just come into the back here. Matthew Pickard, please stand up. And Merle, please stand up. This is on our environment and permitting side of things, regulatory affairs. Chuck Hennessy, I believe, in the back. And then I think it's really important, and he's going to hate this, trust me, I know. There's both Morris Morrison, who's part of the mining liaison team with Selkirk. Please stand up, because he's a critical part of this effort with Kevin. And then Jim Harper is somewhere here in the audience. He's going to yell at me later, and that's fine. But Kevin alluded to this. This is a team effort, and it will continue to be a team effort going forward. There are no haves or have-nots. At the end of the day, it's really critical. I could probably call out others, because there's many people in this room that have assisted and called out and provided assistance and commentary. And we're taking it all in. We might believe some of it, if not all of it, but at the end of the day, that's our job. And it's super fun. Thanks to you guys for standing up. And it's a great team. It's a really phenomenal team.
Wonderful. Well, I think we're close to the end of our time, so I would just like, John, quick question.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment more than a question, and hats off to Kevin and the Selkirk people. The Minto mine was a really important mine in the Yukon economy. When it went down, it was devastating, and I don't think people understand the closeness there was, and Colin talked about courage, and it was a courage of the Selkirk to bring that forward. It was so close, the receivership was so close to being liquidated, and that mine probably would have never opened again. So to see what they've done, and Colin, you guys, Selkirk, it's a tremendous, and Fiore did a tremendous job going forward. And I just wanted to, go on a myth here that always comes up. The environmental damage that was done and the closure of Minto, and what a disaster it was. There was no environmental disaster done at Minto. It was a financial problem that they went into bankruptcy. There was a reclamation bond in place that took care of the reclamation. It did not cost the taxpayers of Yukon any money, which is sometimes falsely put forward. This is a huge success story of how it should be done. In the event of a failure, the money was there, the mine carried on and went forward. Kudos to all you guys. Great job.
So I'll just add my comments there. So yes, thank you to the panel for coming forward and sharing this story. I think, as you know, we're all very interested in seeing the success, seeing how this unfolds, and learning lessons from it. So thank you again. Another round of applause for the panelists and everyone.